Have you ever looked at a leader who seems to have, all of it, the title, the team size, the authority, but the second they walk away, their influence just kind of evaporates?
Oh, absolutely. And then you see others whose impact just seems to grow and grow, almost exponentially, years after they've left.
It's a huge difference.
It is. And it's really the core distinction between just having power and having real influence. Our sources today they're super clear on this. The secret to a legacy that lasts isn't in the visible stuff.
Not in the metrics.
Not in the metrics of the power you're given. It's in multiplication. It's in your ability to create more leaders, not just gather more followers. You expand your impact through the people you develop.
And that's the one thing that it feels like almost every organization gets wrong, or at least minimizes. We all chase these easy, quantifiable outputs that look great on a report.
Team size, revenue growth.
Project completion rates, all that stuff. But those numbers, they so rarely capture the real measure of leadership impact.
Which is the culture.
Right. The culture of development and innovation that actually outlives your time there.
Exactly. I mean, leadership that doesn't multiply is, by definition, self-limiting. And this is urgent because the long-term success of any group, a nonprofit, a company, whatever, it's completely determined by the quality of leaders you develop or, failed to develop.
Okay, so that's our mission for this deep dive. We're going to unpack how to quantify that genuine, sustainable growth you can inspire in other people.
Yeah, moving beyond the immediate outputs.
We need to find that strategic balance between, the qualitative and the quantitative insights. We're essentially building a roadmap for what these sources are calling the multiplication scorecard.
It's how you turn this big idea of building leaders into something tangible, something with lasting influence.
So where do we start?
Well, to begin, we have to kind of redefine leadership itself. The core principle, according to this material, is that true leadership is measured by the ripple effect you create through people.
Not the size of your office.
Not the size of your office, or how many direct reports you have, or the authority you get from your title. The highest calling of a leader is the discipline of forming other leaders. It's not the art of just gathering followers.
I really like that shift in language. It moves the whole conversation from management, which is really about control,
Right.
to leadership, which is about growth. And that kind of growth, it doesn't just happen by accident.
No, it really doesn't. You need what the sources call a multiplication mindset. And this mindset, it relies on three very intentional pillars.
Okay.
First is intentionality.
Yeah.
Is actively notice people, pursue them, and plant seeds in them. Second, you need patience.
That's a hard one.
It's the hardest one.
Yeah.
Formation doesn't follow a quarterly schedule. It follows like agricultural rhythms. You have to invest long before you see anything measurable.
And the third.
The third is long-term vision. You are cultivating leaders for future seasons you might not even see yourself. Leaders who could replace you or lead in whole new areas.
The sources give us a really powerful visual for this idea, taken from a classic mentorship text. It's this 4-generational vision. Can you break that 4-layer pattern down for us?
Yeah, it's really the heartbeat of this whole exponential impact idea. It sets up that your job isn't just to teach one person.
It's to teach that person how to teach others.
Exactly. So the pattern moves from the original leader, let's call her Generation 1, the founder or CEO. She invests deeply in Generation 2. The emerging leader, say, a VP.
Okay, so Gen 2 is the direct mentee. What's next?
Gen 2 then tastes that and trains and empowers the faithful people who are Generation 3. That might be your middle managers or your key talent. And crucially, it doesn't stop.
Right.
Gen 3 then equips others. Also, Generation 4. The new hires, the field staff, the next generation entirely. This is exponential growth. Your success isn't just how well Gen 2 does.
It's how many effective Gen 4s they end up producing.
Precisely. And that model, it just shows you why power on its own eventually fails. Your formal authority, it disappears the minute you leave the room.
Or even just go to lunch.
Yeah. But if you spent years building that 4-generation chain of influence,
Yeah.
well, that investment lasts. That's what becomes legacy.
It creates a culture that can sustain itself.
Right. The world measures leadership by control and position. This framework measures it by transmission and a sustained inheritance.
Which unfortunately leads us right into the biggest threat to this whole model.
Numbers trap.
The numbers trap.
Yeah.
Why is it so incredibly seductive for leaders to just equate success with easily counted stuff?
It's instant gratification, Plus, there's shareholder expectation.
Mm.
It is so tempting to measure outcomes like attendance, sales figures, productivity metric.
Completion rates.
All of it. They're easy to track, they're easy to report, and they give you this immediate sense that, hey, something is happening.
But you risk prioritizing what's countable over what's actually transformative. Like, if I only focus on getting 100 people to my training seminar,
Right, the measurable output.
I might totally ignore whether those 100 people actually develop the deep character and skills they'd need to go mentor even 2 other people.
And that is the danger. Inflated numbers can completely hide a shallow impact. You can gather huge crowds or hit massive sales quotas, but if very few lives are being genuinely shaped into future leaders or, ethical decision makers, then multiplication just isn't happening.
The leader starts serving the metrics.
Yes, instead of serving the people who are supposed to be driving those metrics.
The sources bring up this really fascinating historical parallel here. This critique against leaders who meticulously tracked external metrics like tithes or rules, but they totally neglected the more important matters of justice, mercy, and faithfulness. They were prioritizing the visible compliance over the deep core values.
So precisely. They optimized for performance, you could see, but they degraded the character of their organization.
Yeah.
So if we step back, what's the real anchor for leadership assessment?
Well, you mentioned faithfulness and obedience, stuff that happens in the quiet, unseen spaces. But let's get practical. I'm a manager. My boss wants 20% growth this year.
Okay.
How do I go back and tell them my guiding principle is about being faithful with very little? How do I sell slow, deep growth when the organization is demanding fast, big magnitude?
That is the fundamental challenge. And that's why this scorecard idea is so essential. You're not actually abandoning magnitude. You're just redefining success.
Okay.
Success is measured first by faithfulness. Are you following the process of deep investment and holding up the core values, and by who you are becoming? The numbers track what happened. Faithfulness tracks the internal transformation that determines how you'll lead in the long run.
So the scorecard lets you track both side by side. You can prove you're building a foundation that's resilient.
Yes, exactly.
That distinction tracking transformation, not just transaction, that brings us right to the solution, the multiplication scorecard. And it's defined not as some, punitive corporate dashboard.
No, not at all.
Yeah. But as a stewardship discipline. It's designed to track how your mentorship efforts are contributing to both individual growth and the long-term health of the organization.
And its purpose is to answer that one core strategic question. Is multiplication happening beyond me? To get that answer, that holistic assurance, you have to blend the quantitative and the qualitative.
Okay, let's start with the easy half, the quantitative stuff. These track the structural surface outcomes. Things like promotions, role advancement.
Retention rates among the people you're mentoring.
Skill transfer, which you can measure with competency checks.
Yeah.
And of course, just the simple numerical growth in the number of leaders being trained. It gives you a snapshot.
But those numbers, they only tell you if the machine is moving. Since multiplication is fundamentally about shaping the whole person, we desperately need the qualitative metrics. These are the things that have to be discerned through observation and conversation.
But how do you objectively measure something like humility or discernment without just turning it into another compliance checklist?
That's the challenge, and that's why these metrics require deep involvement, not just ticking a box. Qualitative metrics capture that inner formation. Growth in confidence, in initiative, problem-solving ability when you're not there.
Collaboration skills, character development.
Right. And the core takeaway here for any leader is to focus on ethical rootedness and judgment.
So when the sources talk about spiritual attentiveness, what we're really tracking is more like high-level systems thinking and ethical foresight, the ability to make values-driven decisions when the pressure is on.
Exactly. It requires observation, deep and trusting conversations, and what the sources call spiritual attentiveness, which in a professional sense translates to highly attuned, deep behavioral observation. Are they making decisions based on integrity or based on self-interest? That's what you're tracking.
Okay, so to make sure we're covering everything, the scorecard needs to track development across 3 specific dimensions. The first one is pretty straightforward. Technical skills.
Professional competence.
Yeah. Project management, communication skills, data analysis, the hard skills.
Right. The second dimension, which ties back to what we were just saying, is what the sources call spiritual formation. But for a broader audience, this is really the ethical and values-based core.
So discernment, humility, long-term ethical decision-making.
We're tracking whether the leader is rooted in their non-negotiable values, not just in their technical abilities. The goal isn't just competence, it's competence that's rooted in character.
And the third dimension is so critical for team health, relational and emotional skills.
Oh, absolutely. This is empathy, conflict resolution, emotional resilience, the ability to build trust.
Because a technically brilliant leader who has no emotional intelligence is just a multiplier of chaos, not culture.
When leaders measure all three, the seen, technical, and the unseen, ethical and emotional, they get a complete resilient picture of growth. The hardest part, though, is being prepared to deliver feedback on character. That is so much harder than critiquing a spreadsheet.
So once you have these metrics defined, you need a rhythm to sustain the growth. Because leadership without continuous feedback, it's like sailing without a compass. You're moving, but you have no idea if you're on course.
Right. Feedback and evaluation are practices of discernment to trace that growth. They're not tools for control. And this gets embodied in the mentorship cycle. It starts when you observe. You watch the behaviors, the strengths, the blind spots of your emerging leader.
Then you move to the hardest part. Assess. The sources say this has to be honest, but also redemptive. How do you give high-integrity feedback about a character issue without just crushing the person's spirit?
It's all in the framing. You have to frame the assessment around their potential and the organization's mission, not just their failure. It takes a lot of intentional self-regulation to make sure you're speaking from a place of service, not just frustration. You're assessing their trajectory, not just a snapshot of their performance.
And after assessment, you coach, you give guidance and training. Then you invite them to reflect. And finally, you adjust their roles or goals to match their new growth edge.
Which keeps the whole process dynamic.
Right.
But this cycle is crucial. But as you grow, you can't just look inward. Leaders need to look outward to accelerate growth. And that's through benchmarking.
So comparing your practices, your outcomes, those multiplication metrics with other high-performing organizations.
Exactly. But the key here, and the sources are really clear on this, is that the goal is insight, not imitation. You aren't just trying to copy what some company 3 times your size is doing.
No, you're looking for your own blind spots. You're trying to identify areas of strength and opportunities for growth that you might have missed just being inside your own bubble.
It's a tool of wisdom. You might find your retention rates are great, but your internal transfer of ethical skills is way lower than your peers. Benchmarking gives you a data-driven reason to invest more in those qualitative areas.
But the real power comes when you move beyond just the data points on the scorecard and into the narrative. Storytelling is the ultimate multiplier.
Yes, because stories give life to lessons that numbers just can't convey. They touch hearts, and they inspire action that can be reproduced.
Just think about the difference. If you only report the quantitative data, you'd say something like, 5 mentees completed their programs and received promotions this quarter.
Yeah, it's measurable, but it's cold. It's lifeless.
Now contrast that with the qualitative story. Maria stepped into a high-stakes leadership role, even with her long-term fear of public speaking, and using the techniques we practiced, she successfully led the outreach and has now started mentoring 2 of her peers herself.
Story B is memorable, it's reproducible, and most importantly, it shows you how growth actually happens. It links the investment, the coaching, the training directly to the transformation.
Maria overcoming her fear and then multiplying her own influence.
Stories provide that essential qualitative proof that this whole multiplication thing is actually working.
So what does this all mean for us? I think the final summary is that multiplication is not some temporary initiative you launch this quarter. It's a permanent culture.
Yeah, it has to be. And it requires tracking growth intentionally with that scorecard, cultivating internal wisdom with a focus on ethical discipline, and making sure your systems are promoting development, not dependence.
And that brings us all the way back to the core question of legacy.
It does. The ultimate test of your leadership is not how much authority you have while you're in power, but how much lasting, values-based inheritance you deposit into other people.
Legacy is measured by what's left after you're gone.
That's the bottom line.
That really is the ultimate standard leadership without limits. It's not measured by the breadth of your initial reach, but by the depth of your influence in people's lives. So if your measure of success is the leaders you empower, here's the provocative thought we'll leave you with. Who are the Timothys, the next generation, that you will stop measuring by output alone and begin intentionally investing in this week?